Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those who are new, we have Security Tuesdays, Data Science and AI Wednesdays, Cloud Native and Red Hat OpenShift Thursdays. So, if you want to enhance your skills, do join us on those days. And without further ado, we would begin with our today's webinar, that is Security Tuesday, and it is about securely customizing your user experience using App ID. So I'll hand it over to Shimpy. Shimpy, over to you and good luck. Shimpy, can you hear me?
I'm
Busiso,
sorry.
can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes, I can
Shimpy.
hear you.
Yeah, Shimpy, over to you.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. I was getting some lag, but it's fine now.
Yep,
So
over to you. Yeah,
I can. Can you see my screen?
we can see your screen, yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. So yeah, can you hear me okay? Because I'm getting some lag. Okay,
Yes, we can hear you.
I think I'm getting some echo. Let me
All right,
let me
Shimpy.
get rid of my let me get rid of my headset.
Sure. All right. Shimpy, you can turn off your video if you are having some network issue. All right, so Shimpy, can you refresh your browser window for the issues and this will work out. Apologies, guys, for the delay. This happens sometimes. The network issues does arise, so apologies. So meanwhile, let us know where are you guys from in the chat. I see someone from Saudi Arabia. Hello, I am from Pakistan. I hope you guys are excited for today's workshop. Hi, Shimpi.
Hi, hi Ashna. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. So you can share your
Okay.
screen.
I'm sorry about that. I tried this new microphone and it just stopped working. So let me share my screen real quickly.
Sure. So for those who just joined, welcome to IBM Developer Series. And today we are going to talk about how you can securely customize your user experience using App ID. And we have Shimpi, Kumari, and Busiso with us today. So over to you, Shimpi.
Yeah, thanks, Ashna. Hello, everyone. My name is Shimpi, and I'm an automation test lead in IBM Slovakia. Today, I'm here with my colleague Bashiso and Ashna to talk about App ID. I am really passionate about talking about different technologies and share the experience and share the knowledge with you. So that's why I'm here. So let's get started. So we will be talking about the app ID and a couple of terms and terminologies that Bashiso is going to use later while doing the workshop. So we'll be focusing on app ID and different cloud technologies, cloud native, Kubernetes services, cloud foundry, etc. So in case you have any questions, feel free to shoot it later in the chat or ask me directly. So let's talk about App ID. What is an App ID? For those of you who have never heard of App ID, uh, it's first of all, it's basically to add an authentication to your application. So you need to know who is using your application, right? So that is one aspect of having an App ID. So it allows you to add an authentication layer, but it also allows you to add a tailored experience for the users. What I mean by that is, let's imagine there's a local coffee shop at your place, and let's say there's an Alex, and he goes to this coffee shop every single day, right? And eventually, what happens is the coffee shop remembers Alex's name and his usual latte preference. So one day he visits, and the waitress is like, "Hello, Alex, there you go. There is your pumpkin latte," right? So, what really happened here is it really saved everyone's time. So, be it cafe owners or the users, and it also enhanced user experience so that they felt special. So, when you customize user experience, you can do that using an app ID. So, that is also a feature about app ID. Now, let's talk about authentication and authorization a little bit. So, what really happens when you try to access a part of the application or an application which is protected with authentication, right? So, this is the normal authentication workflows. So, let's say there is an HTML page which you are trying to access, which is protected. So you make the request to this URL. If you are not authorized to access this, the authentication server, it directs you to the page which asks you to log in with your credentials. So it could be your username and password, or it could be a third-party provider that can really authenticate you. So once you are there, once you fill in your credentials, you get a grant code, and that grant code is passed to an app server at the client side. And using that grant code, the app server issues a token. It's called JWT token, also known as JSON Web Token. And once you have that token issued, you can get to see the page that you try to access. So, using an app ID, all the things that happen between the request and response, these are taken care by app ID itself. So, as a developer, you don't need to worry about anything, any of this flow. So that makes developers' experience really seamless while adding authentication to the application. Some of you might be wondering about the difference between authentication and authorization. So I'll give you an example. So let's say you are a pet sitter, and you have a client who went on a holiday, and they needed to sit their pet for a while. So you needed to get access to your client home, right? So what you need first thing is the key to your client's home. So you got the key, you unlock the door, you are inside your client's home. And but once you are inside the client's flat, You do not necessarily need access to the bedroom. You can have access to the kitchen for the pet supplies. You can have access to the living room, or you can have access to the backyard. But the access to the bedroom is not necessarily needed. So that's where authorization comes. Authentication is basically to validate the user for who they claim they are, and authorization is followed by authentication, which gives you the right permission to a certain resource on the server. So this is all taken care at the app ID side on IBM Cloud. Now, when you first provision an app ID on IBM Cloud, you'll have a lot of sample code available, and you can try this with any of the code which you're comfortable with. So there are Node.js, there are iOS SDKs, and there are Android based application sample code as well. So once you download that, you'll be able to configure all of this through the IBM Cloud GUI. So as you can see here, the first thing that I said is app ID to provide authentication, right? So you can really customize how your authentication page looks like. So you can really, excuse me, you can really add a header of your own color, which reflects your brand. You can even add a logo, and then you have Facebook third party provider basically. So you can have Facebook or Google, or you can even have a cloud directory to have user authenticate. So this is how authentication works on App ID. The another feature of App ID is profiling. Now, profiling means is it's basically customizing your user experience. So you see this a lot in your day-to-day life. So let's say you visit an e-commerce website, and once you're logged in, you might see that you are seeing some of the products which you already bought. You are seeing some of the recommendations. You are seeing some of the product which you last visited, but you did not finish buying it. So it's all about app really watching you, what you're browsing, and then kind of storing your preferences in a way that it can really help customize your experience in the app. So that's what profiling means. Now, user management is also another feature. When you add an authentication to your application, it's pretty complex to manage different users. There are lots of different issues. You have to make sure that all the user information is pretty secured and they are protected. So App ID reduces all these complexities. It takes care of it on the cloud side. So you don't have to, as a developer, you don't really have to worry about that. Um, Identity, again, it's a pretty complex topic. So if you store somebody's identity, depending upon geolocations, there could be a lot of compliance issue. And with Europe, as you know, GDPR. So all these things probably are taken care at the cloud side. And again, App ID is highly integrated with the rest of the services on IBM Cloud, be it Kubernetes service or Cloud Functions. So it can easily talk to the other services which you're using in your app. This brings me to the Cloud Foundry. Cloud Foundry is basically platform as a service. By that, I mean it really provides developer a seamless experience to design, build, and deploy their app. So the developer don't really have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. When they are writing code, they can just work on something that matters. So the Cloud Foundry gives the complete platform to the developer, and they can just focus on building and running the application. So if you look at this stack, where exactly the Cloud Foundry resides, so you have got this physical hardware, and then on top of that, you have got virtual machines. Uh, on top of that sits Kubernetes service, and above that is Cloud Foundry. and then comes serverless technology and things like that. So as you go up this stack, you kind of lose control. It's like a framework. That's how every time you use a framework, it's you lose control. Although you gain speed, but you kind of lose control on that. So as you go down on the stack, you have more control of the infrastructure and how it operates. But as you go up, you kind of have lesser and lesser control. But it really helps you deliver your application faster, and it's really a polyglot uh, platform, which means that you can have application written in any language, and the Cloud Foundry build pack is going to take care of the build, and it's going to make the developers experience seamless. It's also open source. So there are a lot of third-party service which you can add, and there's a marketplace where the third-party are adding their integration, and you can use it as well. Um, so let's move on to the next slide. As I said, you can use your own language, so it's completely independent of the language you're using. And let's say you have a backend application, and you want to deploy. So although Cloud Foundry really works on this Diago and Garden, but if you have a backend application where you want to use the kubectl command and take the advantage of Kubernetes, then you can do that as well on Cloud Foundry, because it's really interoperable, and it just takes care of everything underneath. Um, which brings me to the cloud native topic. All these things are quite interrelated to each other, all these terms. So, what is cloud native? Cloud native is basically an approach to really design, develop, and manage an application. So, the main theory behind cloud native is it focuses on application being more elastic and more distributed in nature, right? So what are the benefit of cloud native? Why you should be doing cloud native? And the answer is because cloud native allows you to use all the latest technologies like continuous integration, container engines, and orchestration. And that enables you to practice DevOps, continuous deployment, and agile transformation and things like that. So it's really like modular approach to your application. It helps you deploy your application faster. It helps you to test your these modules which you deploy faster, and then it also helps you to kind of get faster feedback on your application and really kind of increase the speed. Now, what are the four pillars that cloud natives are built upon? So these are the four important pillars which comes when we talk about cloud native, right? So the first one, of course, is the famous microservices architecture, and we're going to talk about these topics briefly shortly. So let's talk about microservices and why microservices architecture is important. But before that, let's talk about monolithic architecture, which is replaced by microservices in a lot of projects. In monolithic architecture, what happened is you have this entire giant application with one single code base, right? So the problem with this kind of architecture was that it was really, for example, if you were to add one single business feature to your application, you change some code, you commit, and you push the changes. But when you deploy it, you have to deploy the entire application, right? That made the entire process really bulky, and also scaling became difficult when you talk about this giant monolithic application, right? So let's see how microservices architecture helps you overcome some of these shortcomings. Although keep in mind that none of these these architecture type is, best. Like, it's not like microservices is better than monolithic. For some of the project, you still have to use monolithic because it's just not viable to use microservices architecture, and there comes some complexities with microservices architecture as well. We'll talk about that. So these are the problem with monolithic architecture, and let's talk about microservices. And it's always best to talk about these technology in terms of real world example. So let's go back to the e-commerce website that we were talking about. So consider an e-commerce website. Now, an e-commerce website is made up of several different features, right? For example, catalog full of products, a search capability, and then there's a shopping capability, and then there's a reviews, and then there's an inventory and things like that. So all of this modules come together and make this e-commerce application. So let's imagine on a certain day, there was a sale, and it was expected to have a huge traffic in the application. So you needed to scale the shopping feature. You needed to scale that feature out. If you were using monolithic architecture in your application, you have to scale the entire application up, because your components are not really segregated; they're all together. But if you follow microservices architecture, which is basically mini applications who are independently deployed, independently testable, and who are just talking with each other using REST APIs. So these kind of architecture really helps you to scale. So if you were to scale shopping feature, you could just simply scale that feature up without really affecting the other part of the application. So that's the advantage of having microservices architecture. As you can see, it's independently deployable and highly maintainable and testable. Um, Now we're going to briefly talk about virtual machines and containers technologies, because they are also a very crucial part of cloud natives, right? So what are virtual machines? Basically, you got a physical hardware, and on top of that, you have a host operating system, and above that, you have a hypervisor, which enables you to kind of spin off the virtual machines, right? And architecture-wise, container is a little different than virtual machine. If you look at the containers, it has the physical infrastructure and host operating system, but it doesn't really have the hypervisor part. Instead, it has the container engine, right? So as you can see in these two slides, the kernel is shared when it comes to the containers. But in case of virtual machine, you have got like the entire operating system of virtual machine. So let's say you have an application which you have deployed on virtual machine. So if you were to scale this application, you have to copy the entire guest operating system 2 and 3 times, right? So it kind of consumes a lot of resources of your hardware, and it's not an efficient way. I like to think of it as let's say you're driving to your work today, and you're using your car, right? And you've got 5 spaces in your car, but you're driving alone because you have 4 other spaces left. So this is virtual machine scenario. But if it were a container, you could not just be driving the car, but you could drive a motorcycle, you could drive a semi truck. Depending upon the workload, you could really change the the way of driving itself, and all the license and everything is taken care by the containerization, right? So virtual machines are heavy. It's the startup time for virtual machine is higher because, as you can see, it has to boot everything, the entire operating systems, the binaries and libraries. while in containers, it's already up and running. So it takes less time to start up. So containers are definitely more efficient. And this is a small comparison between virtual machines and containers. So as I said, the startup time in containers are much lesser, and the disk space is utilized efficiently and is much more portable in nature. So with this, I am going to hand it over to Bashiso, and he's going to walk you through the hands-on workshop. And hopefully you find this slides useful. Thank you.
Okay. Um, Thank you so much for that, Shimpi. What I would like to ask everyone to do, okay, let me just wait for Shimpi to stop sharing. And okay, so what I would like us to do now is let's just take the next 5 minutes or so. Please just use the button at the very bottom that says IBM Cloud Sign Up. Just click on it and just sign up for an IBM Cloud account if you don't already have one. If you have one, please just use the same button, then go ahead and log into your account, then we'll begin shortly. Thank you. Shimpi, please just stop sharing before you proceed with everything else. Okay, thank you. Okay, before we proceed, just to see that everyone is on the same page, if you have signed up or signed in to your account, please just let me know in the chat section. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, any queries, please just let me know as well. I'll be addressing those accordingly as I move along. Then I saw a few comments previously with regards to the slides. So Shimpi has just shared a link with us here to a GitHub repo where you should be able to find the slides if you have need to access those later on. Okay, is everyone signed in? May I proceed?
Hey guys, so do let us know in the chat that you have signed in or signed up for IBM Cloud. If you already have the account, kindly use the link that is provided in the chat or on in the middle of the screen, call to action, to sign in to your existing accounts or create an IBM Cloud account. And kindly do let us know so that we can proceed with the hands-on. So we are waiting for your response. Guys, do let us know, should we wait or should we continue? Are you guys ready?
Okay, I think what I will do as now, let me just proceed. Guys, if you, I want the session to be as interactive as possible, right? If at any point you feel as though you are a bit lost or for whatever reason you miss a step, please let me know. I am more than willing to re-explain whatever that I've explained before. It's not really a problem. Okay, so what's going to happen is, and I'm just going to proceed now. Please let me know if there's any issues. What's going to happen is if you click the link that has been shared with us here at the bottom of the screen, the IBM Cloud sign up, you'll be redirected to this page here, right? So this is the page where you'll be able to either sign up for IBM Cloud, or as well, if you already have an account, just use this login feature here to then go ahead and log into your existing account. So for this demonstration here, what I will do is I'm going to use my previous email address that I used to sign up for my personal account that I use for development. Okay, so let me just get that right. So please just go ahead and sign up as well. With that, then we can proceed. Okay, then of course you need to authenticate accordingly here. Okay, so as soon as that is complete and you are now logged into your IBM Cloud account, just for anyone who's maybe new to IBM Cloud, this here is your homepage, right? Here you can see a quick start to articles and to tutorials that allow you to actually go ahead and see exactly what you can do on IBM Cloud. You can see that where I'm highlighting now. And as well, in the resource summary here, that's where you'll see a summary of all the resources and services in which you have provisioned before on IBM Cloud. So initially, this should be 0, but as soon as you go ahead and start building on your Lightspan account, these will populate accordingly. Okay, so for this webinar here, what we'll be doing is we'll be provisioning something called an app ID instance. Okay, so how do we get that? How do we get that we actually come along, we come all the way to the top rather, to a place called the catalog here. So if you click on the catalog, what you will see here is you will see all of the available services that you can provision IBM Cloud. So you are more than able to then come on the left-hand side here, click on the featured service. It will show you the service that have been recommended for you. You are more than welcome to go and click on the services here. Then you will see all of the available services. As you can see here, there's currently 173 services that you are able to provision. Okay, so as well, if you wanna filter accordingly, you are able to then filter according to catalog category rather on the left hand side here. Then you can just maybe get filtered results. But for this case here, what we'll be doing is we'll be using this app ID instance, and how you get is that it's actually available on the list here. Or alternatively, you're more than welcome to go ahead and search for it in the catalog. So if I search here, as you can see, I see the suggestion. The first one, I'm going to go ahead and just pick it. Okay, so where this takes me now is it takes me to a place in which is sort of the home page for the service itself. Okay, so here is where you actually provision your service and actually go ahead and use it, right? So I want to sort of direct you guys to two main things before we proceed. Just at the very top here, there's the documentation and the API documentation just next to it here, and I'll come to that in much more detail a bit later on. Okay, so what you want to do first and foremost is you want to just go ahead and maybe open up the documentation in a separate tab. Then what I would implore that you guys do later on when you are coming back and playing around with this here is have a look at the API documentation as well, because that's very, very useful for your development. Okay, then going a bit down here, you want to select the location, right? I would suggest that you leave this step here under Dallas. That's what I would suggest, and you will see exactly where we will use the location a bit later on. Then going a bit down here, you'll be asked what you want to provision. So initially, just click on the light here. It's clicked by default. Then from them, just configure your resource. So give your resource a name, a service name, then you can leave everything else as it is. But just a quick heads up, right? If you go on all the way to the right-hand side of your screen, it says here, existing light plan instance. So what this means in this regard is that you can only provision one instance of App ID in a light plan account. So in this case here, it means I already have one. So what I will do just to proceed accordingly, I will just open up my resource list in a new tab, and then I'm going to go ahead and delete that instance that already exists. Then I will re-provision it and work on it accordingly. So then just a quick note, if you delete an instance, you won't be able to retrieve it. So just take a quick note of that. So the instance that I want to delete in this regard here is under services and is the App ID K8 instance. So I'm going to go all the way to the right-hand side here, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete that so I can proceed. Okay, let's just give it a moment. Okay, that's perfect. It's been set accordingly. So now with that being done, right, if I come back here and I now refresh this page here, I believe that it should allow me to then go ahead and provision a service accordingly. Okay, so as you can see, our pop-up warning here has been taken care of. So I'll go all the way down. Just a quick reminder, I'll leave everything else as it is. I'll go all the way down here, and I'm gonna go ahead and click on create. Okay, so as soon as that is done, right, you should see this page next. So this page here will be sort of the entry page to your service itself. So what this means now is that you have provisioned the service. You are then able to then go ahead and use the service, right? So before we actually go ahead and do that, what I want to do first and foremost is there's something called your access. I'm not able to see your mouse movement. Okay, so let's just see. Okay, I think I think it should be fine. Okay, just let me know, Dipesh, if that proceeds, but I think it should be fine with regards to my mouse. Okay, I think it should be fine because I'm able to see it. Okay, continuing from there now, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and sort of allow access, manager access rather, to ourselves to then go ahead and use this App ID instance. So why this is a thing is because on IBM Cloud, there is a provisioning that allows you to work in teams, right? So in the teams, then you're able to assign other IBM Cloud accounts, access your service, and then allow them sort of assign them.
Busiso?
Yes.
Someone said in the chat that they're unable to see your mouse movement. So
Can you
you
see it
move your
now?
mouse? Nope, nope. Yeah,
You
now
can.
yeah, now it's visible. Yes,
You can see the mouse itself.
I can see the mouse, but I can see when you click something.
Okay, that's really weird because I can see the mouse on my screen, but
Maybe reshare your screen again.
okay, let me just try resharing. Okay, what about now?
No, we can see the mouse, but when you select something, that's visible.
Okay, that's really weird. I've never experienced this before. Because I can see my mouse here, so I'm not really sure why you're not able to see it yourself.
I don't know that either. Are you sharing the entire screen?
Yes, I am.
So maybe when you're explaining something, just try to select that. I guess.
Okay. Okay, guys, my apologies for this here. I have no idea why my mouse is not being shared along with the rest of my screen. When I'm explaining a particular part, I will just try and highlight over it so you can see exactly which part of the screen I'm talking about. So my apologies for that. Okay, I think we can proceed that way. If it's still a problem, please just let me know. Then maybe I'll try leaving and rejoining. I'm not sure if that's going to help, but I will try it as a last resort. Okay. So where I was explaining something called access roles. So how that works is you're able to assign various members of your team specific sort of control over what they can do in your servers. So as an example, someone can be assigned maybe a writer, someone can be maybe a viewer without any changing permission, or someone can be a manager, right? So before we're able to sort of commit changes here, and you might see this if you started to work with this here, you might need to sort of change access to you might need to change access to who's able to do what in your application instance. But before we go ahead and do that, what I want to do first here is that first and foremost, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and just allow users to sign into my application without verifying their email address. So what this means is that if you've used something maybe if you've used a social networking platform, for example, right? What happens is when you sign in the very first time, it will ask you to verify your user ID or your email address essentially before proceeding. So just for this webinar here, and just so that we can move along more proficiently, I will disable that so that we can just proceed. But please leave that on or choose one that works for you in your instance when I'm playing around with this a bit later on. So as you can see here, it says we are able to allow users to sign up and sign in using the email address and a password. So you can either use an email address password combination or a username password combination. We allow users to sign into your app. This should be yes. Then allow users to manage their app, their account from their app. This should also be yes. So this will talk about more with regards to profiles. So what I want to do now is I'm actually go into email. Then from here, I'm going to go under email verification. Then what it says here is that I want to allow the users to sign into my application without first verifying their email. So what I want to do is I'll actually go ahead and click on yes here. It will just disable user verification initially, but it will prompt them to verify the email a bit later on. So this should be fine for now. Then with that being said, I want to then proceed next to then go ahead and talk about something called user profiles. So for me to be able to do that, I'm going to go all the way to users here. Then when you're here, right, you're able to create a new user. So this here, you can do it manually. So if I do it here just to test how everything is working, it should be fine. But as well, it should be the same sort of approach when someone is signing into your application using a front end login page. So they'll be able, maybe for example, if I say create user here, it will ask them for their first name, it will ask them for their last name, their email address, and their password, and to verify their password essentially. So that's what this does for us here. But just for this webinar here, what we'll do is we'll then go ahead and create a dummy user that we'll be using going forward, and then see exactly how we can play around with that user's credentials and attributes and all of those things. So what I'm gonna do here, and guys, just a quick reminder, if anything I'm saying is not clear, or you want me to slow down a bit or repeat whatever, please let me know. I'm more than I'm willing to do that. What I'm going to go ahead and do here first is I'm going to go ahead and create a name for my imaginary user. So in this case here, I'll just use test. Then I'm going to say name. Okay, I'm going to come here. I'm going to go ahead and say test surname. I think this should be fine. Then for the email address here, I'm just going to go ahead and use test at IBM.com. So this email doesn't exist, but that's fine. So heads up, if you're doing this a bit later on and you're going to see things like your email verification, you should use a real email address here where you'll be able to verify it accordingly. Okay, then from there, what I want to see next here is a password, right? So a password here should be at least eight characters. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a password, and then I'll go ahead and re-enter the same password in the next field just to create my user. I'm going to go ahead and click on save here. Okay, then what this will do is it will allow me to create a user. So this is where access comes into play now. So it allowed me to create a user here, but it might be different for you with regards to creating a user because you don't have the right access. And I will show you how to fix that now. So what you do is, and this will also allow us to sort of retrieve a important credential for later on as well. How you fix the access here is that you actually go all the way to your IBM Cloud homepage. So I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab. Okay, so when you're in your homepage here, what you want to go ahead and do in your own account is you want to go ahead and click under Manage here, then go all the way into Access here. Okay, so when you're there now, what you want to go ahead and do firstly is actually go ahead and go all the way down to something called Service IDs here. Let me just highlight that. It's where it's blue now on your left-hand side of your screen. And if you click under Service IDs here, as you will see, we are now in the Service ID homepage. Then you are able to then go ahead and click on Create. So the blue button on the left-hand side on the right-hand side of your screen, where there's a plus sign. So it's where I'm just taking my mouse over. So you might not see my mouse, that's fine. So if you click on Create here on the blue button on your right-hand side, you will then be asked to enter a name and a description. So for this here, I'll just use maybe new service ID. Then I'm going to just call it new service ID webinar. Then you can add a description here. So I can just add an awesome description here. Okay, then just go ahead and click on Create. Okay, so with that being done, right, what you want to go ahead and do now is allow the access essentially to your service. So how you do that is where I'm currently highlighting now, it's written access group. Just next to it here, there's access policies. So that's what I'm clicking now here, where the blue I'm marking it on top. Then from there, you want to go ahead and click on assign access, right? Then from there, I'm going to go ahead and just click here. Okay, perfect. So where we are now is, as you can see, it says here, assign access to a new service ID for our webinar. So this is our name of our service ID. I'm gonna go all the way, I'm gonna go a bit down here, and I'm gonna click on IAM services. Then what I will do is I'm just gonna click the drop-down menu just underneath it here. So it says open menu. If I click here, it says, it shows me all of the possible instances and services that I can actually go ahead and link to my access. So I'm gonna go all the way, I'm gonna scroll all the way down here and click on App ID as I've just done here. Okay, so that will then allow us to see a wider menu, which has which will ask us first and foremost, how do you want the scope to scope the access rather. So for this here, I'll just click resource based on selected attributes, and because I'm gonna just go ahead and sort of link a default group to this here, and you will see in a few moments why I've done this here when I work with my IBM Cloud CLI. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just select defaults there. That should be fine. Then if I scroll a bit down from here, for platform access, what I wanna do is I wanna assign administrator rights to the platform. So I'm gonna go ahead and just click that. Then I'm gonna go a bit down here, and then for service access here, I wanna assign manager rights here. Then that should be fine. Then the next step that you wanna go ahead and do is just click on add and assign here. So as soon as you've done this here, you will be able to retrieve something called your IAM access token, and you should be able to then go ahead and create users the very same way I've done so far. Okay, hope everyone is still with me so far. So what I want to go ahead and do next now, now we've done this, and we'll retrieve all the credentials in a moment. What I want to go ahead and do next now is I want to actually show you what we are following along with here. So initially, I asked you guys to open up this tab here, which is the documentation for the app ID. So this here is what we'll be following along on doing today here. So I've just shared it with you guys in the chat section. So what happens is, as a use case, right, what we want to go ahead and do is actually customize our user experience. So we live in an era where we see advertisements all over the place. You go onto Google, the first thing you see is customized advertisements. So you go into an application, there's tailored ads for you then to exactly what you would be interested in. So in a very similar scenario here, we want to imagine that you're a developer who's working on an application maybe for a food retail or an online retailer that specializes in food rather. and you want to sort of customize a tailored experience to your end user based on their sole preference of a diet, right? So, as an example, you can have someone being a vegetarian, someone preferring meals with low carbs or gluten-free meals, or whatever the case may be. So, how we'll store these preferences here is that we'll store them as something called attributes. Okay, so an attribute essentially is just a quick definition. It is essentially a characteristic that defines a user in an application essentially. So in this case here, what I'm going to do is when I go all the way down here to step 2, we've already went to step 1 here. I showed you guys how to configure that, that's fine. If you go all the way to step 2 here, what you want to go ahead and do now for your various users, you want to go ahead and add attributes to them, which later on can be used as a base for advertisement with regards to preferences. Okay, so in this case here, as you can see, we have an attribute here which is called food preference, and the food preference for this particular user here would be vegetarian and gluten-free meals. So this will be the food preference for this one here. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to copy this here, and I'm going to add a similar attribute to the end to the user that just created in our app ID instance here. Okay, so for us to be able to add the user attribute to our user, we can do it using one of 3 ways, and I will show you guys all the 3 ways real quickly here, and I will explain exactly when you would use these ways as opposed to the others essentially. Okay, so the first way here is to then go ahead and edit manually. Let me just pin this tab here. The first way here is to then go ahead and edit manually to the end user here. So this is not really scalable for many users. So you want to do something much more neater than this here. But just for practice here, you are able to then go ahead and say view user details. And here, what you will see now is you will see all the credentials that is assigned to the user, like your user identifier, which is your email address, your first name, your last name. Very important when the user last logged in as well to your application, and you're then more than able to then go ahead and copy the ID if you want to use it somewhere else later on as well. Then going a bit down from here now, what you want to go ahead and do is there's something called predefined attributes. So these here is just the attributes that have been set when you create the user, things like your first name and last name, whether the user is active or not, the email address, as you can see, this is the primary email. You can see when the account was created in the metadata. So this here is just the data about our data essentially. Then you can go ahead as well and just click on show more. You'll see the schemas, you'll see the name given and the ID as well, and the status of the user. Then these are your predefined attributes, right? But we can always create new attributes, and this is where the experience, the secured tailored experience comes into play. So for our tailored custom attributes here, what you're gonna go ahead and do is you're gonna go ahead and just click on edit here. As you can see right now, there is no attributes, right? If you click on edit here, what that will allow you to do is it will allow you to go ahead and add custom attributes. So these here can be as many as you like. Maybe things like your preferences, whether maybe you want to receive notifications via email or SMS, or so you can add all of the preferences of the user here, in which later on you'll be able to use the JSON-like format to retrieve the data and to send the data as well using your calc commands later on as well. So just for this example here, I'm going to paste the attribute that is we've copied from before. So it's just a simple attribute that says this end user's food preference is just vegetarian and gluten-free, nothing more. Okay, so for us to do this here, there's a quick error here. It says bad string, and why that's the case because of the quotation marks here, we should use the standard quotation marks that are given in the keyboard. So I'm going to go ahead and just replace that. Okay, I'll replace these ones as well. Okay, let me just retry that. And replace this one as well. Okay, so as soon as that is done here, our error will disappear and you'll be able to then click on save. Okay, so what this does now for us is it has added this user to the mailing list. For example, if you want to send out a mailing list to everyone who prefers vegetarian, it has added the user. to a possible mailing list, or you're able to send them customized advertisement with regards to their food preference. So this is a very powerful technique that you can actually go ahead and use here to accomplish preferences and to accomplish sort of segregating your data and your profiling and your profiles of your users accordingly, essentially. Okay, so now that is done here, as you can see, it's saved here. Later on, you're able to go ahead and edit and add more preferences should you feel the need to do so. Okay, so I told you guys I want to show you 3 ways of doing this here. This is the first way, right? So I want to go all the way back here, and if I go, I'm gonna go back to all users. And if I go all the way back to our tutorial here, and as I said, we are currently under step 2. What I want to do next is I want to show you the second way of doing this here, right? So more realistically, right, you'd be sort of more realistically if you're working in a cloud-based, cloud-native application. What you would do is you would use something like a cal command to sort of maybe have a batch process, process many users automatically or instantly, or have this here embedded in your code as well. So for you to be able to sort of use the cal command to put an attribute into an end user's profile, right? You are able, you can run this command here. If you are using something like either a Mac OS or Linux OS, this should work properly. Or as well, you can use either something like your IBM Cloud CLI, or you can use the IBM Cloud Shell to run this command here. And I will show you exactly how to get started with that in a few moments. So what you want to go ahead and do next when you are here now is actually go ahead and run this command. But before we go ahead and do that, I want to show you guys exactly where to get all of the required information. So you can see here in our HTTP request, we require a region, we require a tenant ID, we require a user ID, and we require a IAM access token here. So I'm just going to show you exactly where to get those. So for the tenant ID here, what you want to do is you want to go all the way back to your app ID instance. You want to go all the way down to service credentials where I'm clicking right now, right? So initially there won't be any service credentials. Please go ahead and click on the blue button towards the right hand side of your screen that says new credentials. Then what that will do is it will then allow you to then go ahead and create credentials that you can use later on in things like a cal command, or when you want to work with API on Swagger, essentially. So what you want to go ahead and do is just click on the role here and just change that to manager, then click on add. Okay, so what this will do, as you can see, it created a new service credential for us called service credential 1. If you then go ahead and expand this here, you'll be able to see your API key for your service, your client ID, which we'll use a bit later on, your secret, and what I've just mentioned before we came here, your tenant ID here. So this here, what I've just highlighted now is essentially what you would replace the tenant ID on this case with here. And I think I skipped the region here. So the region here, it is the region you selected for your app instance here. In our case, it was US South, which is based in Dallas. Whatever region you selected, you should put that region in here, essentially. Then, so of course, you don't have to do this manually. If you have a program in place running, you are more than able to use these here as maybe variables. Sorry about that. As variables rather, then continue injecting those accordingly. Then what you want to go ahead and do next is your user ID. So you get this here. You get this here from your cloud directory, then users. Then you are able to then go ahead and copy the user ID from here. If you go into user details here, copy your user identifier, and then put that accordingly on the side here. Then lastly, when I talk about the IAM access token here, and how you generate that is that you can use either one of two ways to do this here. You can use the IBM Cloud CLI that you can install in your own terminal in your local machine, or you can use the IBM Cloud Cloud Shell. All right, so I'm going to show you the IBM Cloud Shell first, then I'll proceed with the CLI. So where we get the IBM Cloud Shell is you want to go all the way back to your homepage here. You can do it from here, but I just want to go to the homepage. Then just next to your name here, as you can see, it says some Commerce account. Just next to your name here at the very top, there is this icon that I'm currently selecting here. If you click on this here, what it does is it opens up an IBM terminal where you're able to go ahead and run Ubuntu commands accordingly here, and it's what we can use to get our IAM access token essentially. And as an alternative, while this is preparing here, you are more than welcome to then go ahead and use something called the IBM Cloud CLI. So how you use that is that you actually go ahead and Google IBM Cloud CLI. Okay, then the first thing here should be the documentation for the IBM Cloud CLI. I'm going to go ahead and just go into it then. Okay, so it allows you to install the CLI in either a Mac OS or a Linux environment or a Windows 10 Pro environment as well. So if you're on Mac or Linux, just copy this command as it is, run it in your terminal, and you should be install the required dependencies. Then you should be able to run the IBM Cloud commands accordingly. If you're on Windows 10, please open up your PowerShell, and I will just do that now. Then as soon as that is open, you are more than able to then copy this command as it is using the copy button here and run it in your PowerShell accordingly here. So I won't go ahead and reinstall that, but how you can see whether everything is as it should be, you should be able to run a command like IBM Cloud developer help, so dev help. Right, and if you see a response that is according here, you should know that everything is installed accordingly, as you can see in my case here, right? So that's fine. So that's one way you can do this here. The other one, you can actually use the Cloud Shell here. Okay, so I think there's a bit of a problem with this one here. So just keep a quick note in the back of your head that you can actually go ahead and use this as well in running your commands. So for now, I'll just close this here and use the other method. That's fine. So in the other method here, using our IBM Cloud CLI, what I will do is I'll just open these here side by side. So what you can actually go ahead and do to retrieve the IAM access token here, you want to go ahead and run the command IBM Cloud login. Okay, so what that will do for you is it will allow you to go ahead and sort of log into your IBM Cloud account so that you're able to run commands against your own account essentially a bit later on. Then first and foremost, you will enter your email address that you use to sign up for IBM Cloud. So in my case here, it should be the one that I used initially. Okay, then the password as well. So just a quick note, the password won't be shown as you're entering it. So just enter it accordingly, then click enter. Then it should authenticate accordingly if it was correct. Then just select your own account. In this case, I'll select number 1, your default account, then that should work accordingly. Okay, so right now here, right, and I think I've mentioned this before, when I was allowing access, I allowed access to the default group. And as you can see now, it says the resource group here, there is no resource group targeted. So what I want to do next here is I'm actually go ahead and target a resource group. So how I do it is I actually run the command IBM Cloud, then I run target, then I pass the G flag next, then from there, I'm just going to pass in default. Okay, so that should allow me to then target the default resource group essentially. So that worked accordingly, and as you can see where I'm currently highlighting now. So that's perfect. I'll just go ahead and clear everything here. So to then retrieve your IAM access token, what you want to go ahead and do is you actually go ahead and run the command IBM Cloud, then IAM, then O authentication tokens. Okay, so as soon as you do this here, you will receive a response, right? And this here is your IAM token. So anything, all the characters in the string after the barrier here should be essentially your IAM token that you'll be copying and inserting into this part here that I'm currently highlighting. So that's how you retrieve it essentially. Okay. So with that being said, we have all the required credentials to proceed here, but I want to show you exactly what you can do here. So the IBM Cloud Shell did not run accordingly. Let me just try it one more time. Okay, so you can run the call command that we just viewed here. You can run this call command here in the IBM Cloud Shell. It should work accordingly. Or as well, you are more than welcome to use the Swagger UI for APIs in that regard, right? So the way you get that is you go to this thing here, and I'll just share it with everyone here. Okay, so as you can see, it's US South, your targeted region, FID.cloud, then Swagger UI here. So I'll just copy this here, and I'll paste it in the chat section. Okay, so as soon as you've done that here, you've now opened up the UI that allows you to work with APIs with regards to the IBM Cloud App ID instance, essentially. So before you go ahead and get started, what you want to go ahead and do is authorize your application. So you do that either one of three ways. You can pass in the API key, which you can find from the service ID all the way back here. You can just go ahead and create a new API key here. Then you can maybe authorize using that. Or as well, you can go ahead and authorize using your username and your password. So I think this is the most basic step. So for username here, you wanna select client ID. Then for password, you wanna select secret here. So where you find these credentials is you find them in your app ID instance, where you go all the way to service credentials at the bottom here, and just expand this here. Then your client ID, what I'm currently highlighting, should be your username. So this guy here, then your secret here should be your password essentially. So as soon as that is complete, you should be able to authorize here, then it should work accordingly. Then lastly, you can use an IAM token, which is essentially what we discovered in the last step here, which is all of this here, then it should authorize accordingly. So as soon as you authorize now, what you want to go ahead and do next, you actually go ahead and play around with this here, and I will leave that to you to actually get dirty with it. You are able to go ahead and firstly maybe return all attributes that are contained in profiles using the get here. So this here is just the equivalent of your call command, but in a UI essentially. Then you are able to do things like return all attributes, return the values of an attribute, set a specific attribute, use an attribute as well. You can go all the way down into identity providers, where you can do things like get Facebook IDP configuration, Google IDP configuration, go all the way down to config. And what we're working with essentially in this webinar here, if I go all the way down, is the cloud directory workflow, where we can do things like your sign up, forget password later on, and you can go to the users themselves and then do things like your get your specified users, update a user, delete a user, invalidate all SSO sessions if you really need to do that. So this is how you can go ahead and get started with that as well. Okay, so just to wrap up here, I want to talk a bit much more about cloud native development, right? So my colleague initially, what she went through in much detail is something with regards to cloud native development, and she spoke about cloud native advantages, microservices, and all of those things. So what you want to do is you are more than able to add app ID to an existing application, right? But as well, if this is the first time you're using it, you're more than welcome to then go ahead and create an application to link to your app ID instance. How you do that is you create something called a Cloud Foundry application. What this allows you to do is it allows you to create cloud native applications in an instance using frameworks which you are already customized and familiar with. So things like your Node.js, your Java, your PHP, they're all supported by this sort of provisioning here. Then if you go all the way down here, it shows you step on how to deploy a simple application, which later on you are able to link to your app ID instance. So for this documentation here, you can either deploy a Node.js application, or deploy a Java application if you go all the way down here. So please just try that out as well. Then from there, you'll be able to link the applications accordingly with the app ID instance essentially. Okay, so this should work accordingly now because you already have the IBM Cloud CLI up and running. So these commands should work accordingly going forward. Okay, so I think this is where I will end for today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'll be addressing those accordingly just before I end today. Okay. Then just two more things before we end today. Firstly, I want to talk to you guys about the survey link. So in the chat section, there's a survey link which has been shared. Please take 2 minutes of your time. Please fill that in for me. It will be very useful for this webinar and future webinars going forward with regards to preparation and with regards to sort of feedback and improving as well. Then that's the one thing. Then the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is I want to share with you guys my details for my details essentially, so you can contact me or my colleague later on should you have any questions. And lastly, call for code, then we can wrap up for today. Okay, so what I will do is I've just shared with you now. If you just see on my screen, these are our details. So the first one is myself. This is my email address. If you have any questions going forward with regards to this webinar here or to anything else related to IBM Cloud, please feel free to reach out to me or my colleague Shimpi, and we'll be able to sort of help you, if not direct you to the people who essentially can. Just please take a note of that. Then lastly, what I want to talk to you about is call for code. Just give me a moment. Okay, I think it's actually a few. Okay, it's back. Okay, that's fine. So it's back. So the time has come this year essentially for us to get started with call for code as well. So this year is a very exciting initiative where we call across all developers to use our open source product and IBM product essentially to build things that change the world, right? So right now we have a call for code initiative that we are running and it's up and running for this year. So please feel free to then go ahead and take a look at that. Then these here, they talk about many topics with regards to improving the quality of the world essentially. So from all the way from radical injustice to things that are called just kids, where we're able to sort of tackle things like your zero hunger and other world problems essentially. So what I will do is just before I end, I'm just going to share with you guys a link to call for code. Please go ahead and sort of sign up for that, get into a team and sort of start building things which will sort of make a difference in people's life as well. Okay, then with that being said, this is where I will end for today. I'm just going to quickly share a link to call for code and then we'll end. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. And I hope to see you in my next upcoming webinar.
Thank you so much, Busiso. Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm going to end the broadcast now. The replay will be available on the same link. Again, as Busiso said, that if you want to ask any questions, you can reach out to him. And we'll be sharing the follow-up email and sharing the resources with you. So have a good rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining us.